Chapter 263. Ning Shui did not hesitate. Upon confirming the ghostly aura on the person, he immediately gave chase to the peeping figure. By the time Lu Renfeng reacted, Ning Shui was already a dozen meters ahead. "Xiaoge, wait for me," he shouted towards Ning Shui's retreating back. Ning Shui did not turn back, he simply kept running. The peeper saw Ning Shui pursuing him, and once again flashed that eerie smile, before vanishing around a wall. When Ning Shui reached that spot, the figure was gone. Ning Shui looked down at the ground, frowning. Lu Renfeng quickly caught up. "Whoa! Xiaoge, you run too fast. What happened?" Ning Shui recounted the incident. Lu Renfeng's face changed as he listened. "Damn, that's terrifying. There's a saying, fear not the thief who steals, but the thief who covets. But," he pointed to the ground, "this is all dirt and gravel. Anyone walking here would leave footprints. So why is there nothing?" Ning Shui was silent. He had just noticed this problem himself. Moreover, when he returned from the mass grave clearing to the dining hall, he had passed by the tree where the peeper had been hiding earlier, and had seen no footprints at all. Could it be that the other party was not human? What did that person want by spying on him? Ning Shui thought back over everything he had done in the past 3 days, and found nothing unusual. He shook his head and said to Lu Renfeng, who was crouching and examining the ground, "Let's go, Big Beard. Let's head back." "Wait, Xiaoge, there's something." Lu Renfeng's voice suddenly turned serious. Ning Shui, who had been about to leave, was startled. He looked at Lu Renfeng, his eyes flickering. "Big Beard, what did you find?" Lu Renfeng took a deep breath. "I smell meat." "Meat? Yeah, the meat from the meat porridge. How come I don't smell it?" "My nose is naturally sharper than most. Trust me, Xiaoge, that guy just now was 8/10 likely the one who gave us the meat porridge." Hearing this, Ning Shui seemed to understand why Big Beard was so serious. "How strange, why would the person who gave us the meat porridge be watching me? I didn't even drink his porridge." Ning Shui felt a growing unease. There were at least 5 hours until nightfall, but he could already vaguely sense the so-called bad thing that Fa Hua had mentioned. No matter what, he had to find the missing Mei Wen before dark today. They quickly returned to their quarters, entering room 1 to find Shen Wei and Dan Hong wearing grim expressions. Seeing Ning Shui and Lu Renfeng appear, they finally breathed a sigh of relief, their tense faces relaxing. "You two finally showed up. I thought something had happened to you. We were just discussing whether to search the temple for you," Dan Hong said, wiping the sweat from his forehead. In broad daylight, inside. Hearing Ning Shui's words, the other two immediately became serious. "Go on, tell us." Ning Shui explained, "I don't know the reason, but the power of the ghosts in the temple is growing, and something we don't understand has happened to Mei Wen. If we don't help the young Shifu, Fa Hua, find Mei Wen before dark tonight, then tonight I fear something terrible will happen, something beyond our control." He recounted a portion of the events to the two of them, including, of course, that eerie peeping figure. Could that peeper be Mei Wen? Shen Weiwei's voice carried a hint of fear. If it were her, suddenly discovering someone spying on her in a remote corner of such a vast temple, she would definitely be scared stiff. It's unclear for now, but the possibility is high. Does that little monk have any issues? I mean, can we trust him? Ning Shui looked toward Dan Hong. "He's on our side. If he wanted to harm us, he's had plenty of chances over the past 2 days. Besides, the ghosts in the temple and the other monks all reject him. If I have to choose, I choose to trust him. Also, even though it's daytime now, I'm not sure if the temple is safe during the day, so we'll split into 2 groups. Remember, when searching the temple, never separate." Shen Weiwei raised her hand. "One last question. If we find that person, how do we contact the little monk?" Contacting each other was easy. Their phones were barely used, batteries nearly full, just a matter of adding friends. But the little monk moved through the temple like a ghost during the day, sometimes vanishing in the blink of an eye. Ning Shui thought for a moment, then suddenly said, "There's one way. I'm not sure if it'll work, but we can try." "What way?" "Ring the bell." Shen Weiwei's eyes went wide. "If you ring the bell, she won't hear it, and if she sees you ringing it, she'll definitely run away." Ning Shui shook his head. Not necessarily. But remember one thing, don't face her directly. If Mei Wen really was the one spying on me earlier, then the moment she realizes you've spotted her, she'll bolt. But if she doesn't know you've seen her, she'll keep watching you. Anyway, for the sake of safety tonight, let's all give it a try. Finally, whether we find Mei Wen or not, everyone returns to the meeting point by 7 p.m. sharp. Everyone nodded. Quickly, the four split into two groups and began searching the temple. Ning Qushui and Liu Renfeng once again headed to the main hall. Unlike before, this time, the Buddha statues in the hall had undergone a strange change. As they stepped inside, they could clearly feel countless malicious gazes staring at them. In truth, they had sensed this the first time they came here. But back then, the feeling was faint, vague, not as distinct as it was now. As the two moved through the hall, they noticed that the Buddha statues draped in red kasayas were slowly turning their heads, staring straight at them. In that gaze, there was an indescribable hunger and greed. Damn it, is this real or fake? The bizarre sight left Liu Renfeng gaping. He felt goosebumps erupt all over his body. Drip, drop. The Buddha statues draped in red kasayas began to bleed, drops of crimson blood trickling down their gilded bodies onto the floor. It hurts. It hurts so much. Wails of agony and resentment echoed throughout the main hall. And it wasn't just one voice. These sounds were all coming from the kasayas wrapped around the statues. Just as the two were frozen in shock, the Buddha statues began to tremble. All of them turned their gazes toward the intruders in unison. Their once peaceful faces twisted into grotesque, malevolent expressions. The most terrifying part, the corners of their mouths stretched nearly to their ears. "Move!" Ning Qushui shouted and bolted out of the hall. Liu Renfeng was right behind her, not a step slower. They ran all the way out of the main hall. When they turned back to look, all the strange phenomena inside had vanished. Everything returned to normal in an instant. Bloody hell. Liu Renfeng's face was pale as he cursed under his breath. No wonder I felt like something was watching me from day one. These statues, could they all be? Ning Qushui stood outside the hall, staring intently at the figures inside, her voice eerily calm. No surprise here. These statues must be the enlightened monks of Deng Ying Temple. It seems our earlier guess was correct. As time passes, some kind of restriction on them is gradually being lifted. Let's go. We can't hide in this hall forever. There's no point in staying any longer. Liu Renfeng nodded. As he left, he still looked back in fear. In a daze, he remembered something and hurried after Ning Qushui. "Xiaoge, do you remember the note we found in room 5? Above, worship the Buddhas. Below, prepare the incense offerings. What about it?" Liu Renfeng said, "The meaning of those words is clear. Those who wish to become Buddhas need to prepare incense offerings to worship those who have already become Buddhas. And incense offerings, whether in Taoism or Buddhism, have many interpretations. One of them is tribute. This temple is deep in the mountains. On normal days, no pilgrims come to make offerings. So what exactly is the tribute?" The more he thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. Ning Qushui turned her head and whispered a sentence that sent a chill in Liu Renfeng's spine. "Perhaps the living are the tribute prepared for the Buddhas. I think that's why the little monk was so desperate for us to help him find Mei Wen. Right now, Mei Wen must be a very important figure." As the two spoke, they passed by a bell tower. Gazing at the towering structure beside them, Ning Qushui suddenly had an idea. "Big beard, let's change our approach." Liu Renfeng rubbed his chin. "What's the plan?" "In a moment, I'll stand atop the bell tower. The view from there is wide. I can see many places. But that also means many places in the temple can see the bell tower. The temple is huge. Instead of us searching for her, why not let her come to us? She likes to spy on me, doesn't she? When the time comes, I'll use my peripheral vision to scan, pretending not to see her. You take my ghost artifact and go find her. We'll communicate by phone." Liu Renfeng's eyes lit up. This plan is feasible. Ning Qushui handed Liu Renfeng a pair of red scissors. This item still had at least one use left. "Strike the moment you see her," he said. Liu Renfeng let out a dark chuckle. "Xiaoge, don't worry. Once I catch her, I'll make sure she knows who's boss." After finalizing the plan, Ning Qushui headed straight for the bell tower. Because of its elevated position with no obstructions around, the view from here was vast. He could see nearly half the temple grounds. He deliberately lowered his head, not scanning his surroundings too closely, focusing only on sensing whether anyone was secretly watching him. His gaze was unfocused. If it were an ordinary person spying, even someone as battle-hardened and perceptive as Ning Shui wouldn't be able to detect it perfectly. But the spy in this temple was different from ordinary people. Its gaze carried something more, almost tangible, making it something Ning Shui could clearly sense. After waiting for about half an hour, Ning Shui felt something. On his right rear side, in the old temple area, a distinct wave of goosebumps rose on his skin. He took out his phone and sent Lu Renfeng a rough location, then slowly shifted his body. Using direct vision to pinpoint details from a distance was clearly difficult, even unreasonable. But if the target had distinct characteristics, it was a different story. It was like being in absolute darkness. If there was even a sliver of light nearby, even if you weren't looking directly at it, your peripheral vision could still lock onto its general position. And at this moment, the spy's gaze was exactly that sliver of light that Ning Shui caught with his peripheral vision. Big Beard, northwest of you, behind the third pillar of that meditation hall, remember to circle around and attack from behind her. Lu Renfeng looked at the message on his phone, a gleam of excitement flashing in his eyes. Good, very good. Following Ning Shui's instructions, Lu Renfeng quickly approached the target location. He cautiously poked half his head out from behind another wall, observing the one spying on Ning Shui. This time, it created a situation of the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. However, when Lu Renfeng observed the spy from behind, he discovered something horrifying. The one spying on Ning Shui was draped in a blood-soaked human skin. That human skin must have belonged to Mei Wen. Lu Renfeng crept toward him, his movements light and silent. The peeping Tom was fixated on Ning Shui atop the bell tower, his eyes revealing an indescribable hunger, like a starving diner eyeing a feast on the table. Perhaps due to his intense focus, he failed to notice Lu Renfeng quietly approaching from behind, until a voice suddenly rang out beside his ear, startling him. "Hey, what are you looking at? Is it that beautiful?" The peeping Tom nearly jumped out of his skin. He spun around, but what greeted him was a pair of scissors, red as blood. Thump! Lu Renfeng struck without mercy. The scissors plunged straight into the peeping Tom's chest. With the sound of blades slicing flesh, the crimson scissors activated their ghost artifact effect. A mysterious force surged into the peeping Tom's body, causing him to let out a blood-curdling scream. And then his eyes instantly filled with venomous hatred. "What are you staring at? Trying to scare someone?" Lu Renfeng glared, then stabbed again with the scissors. This time, the red scissors shattered on the spot. But the second strike still dealt damage. Fresh red blood spilled from his chest. The peeping Tom let out an eerie howl, offering no resistance, and turned to flee. Lu Renfeng naturally refused to let him go, chasing closely behind. And at that very moment, Ning Shui struck the bronze bell atop the tower. Hearing the bronze bell's toll, the peeping Tom ran even faster. He seemed to be wary of something. Lu Renfeng gave chase with all his might, but he simply couldn't catch up, and in the end, he lost sight of him. "Damn it," he panted, cursing under his breath. "What the hell was that thing? Took 2 stabs and still ran that fast, barely even bled." Lu Renfeng's first strike had gone straight for the opponent's heart, but then he quickly remembered. That person might be the abbot, whose heart had already been cooked into meat porridge. That spot was hollow, so his second strike had pierced the peeping Tom's lung. Yet clearly, neither attack had truly wounded him. In the end, Lu Renfeng could only trudge back to the foot of the bell tower, dejected. "Xiaoge, I didn't catch him. He got away." Seeing Lu Renfeng like this, Ning Shui didn't blame him. After all, the opponent wasn't human. Even if their abilities were limited during the day, it wasn't something ordinary people like them could handle. "It's fine. It was within expectations," Ning Shui said. Lu Renfeng noticed there was another person beside him, the little monk, Fa Hua. He didn't know when the other had arrived, but his expression remained stern. He asked Lu Renfeng about what had happened earlier. When he learned that Lu Renfeng had used a special pair of scissors to damage the human skin on the peeping Tom's body, Fa Hua finally let out a sigh of relief. It's all right, his cassock has been broken, at least tonight. Ning Chu Shui seemed to understand what the little monk was implying, and finished his sentence. At least tonight. He can't become a Buddha, right? Hearing this, Fa Hua suddenly lifted his head, his eyes filled with shock. Benefactor Ning, you. How do I know, little Shifu? If I'm not mistaken, the rooms we're staying in are actually the monks' quarters in the temple, aren't they? Only when guests arrive at Deng Ying Temple do they vacate these rooms. Fa Hua fell silent, staring blankly at Ning Shui, astonished that this man could deduce so much about the temple. Ning Chu Shui continued, the process and method of becoming a Buddha, your junior master's senior brothers recorded them all. Ning Chu Shui made no attempt to hide his curiosity and pressed on. So, without a fine kasaya, one cannot become a Buddha? Fa Hua paused for a moment, then nodded firmly. That is correct. According to the descriptions left by the predecessors who achieved Buddhahood in this temple, to become a Buddha requires 3 things: merit, a kasaya, and incense offerings. Lacking even one of these, it cannot be done. Right now, the kasaya he chose has been destroyed. The other 3 he discarded. Until a new kasaya is completed, he cannot become a Buddha. Ning Chu Shui pondered for a moment, then asked with curiosity, Little Shifu Fa Hua, I have a question. If a monk in Deng Ying Temple were to become a Buddha, what would happen? Fa Hua stared intently at Ning Chu Shui, his voice laden with hidden meaning. The temple would hold a grand celebration. A grand celebration? Yes. The Buddhas would host a feast for the newly enlightened monk. Once the grand celebration begins, all the precepts and rules of the temple would become void. On that day, neither Buddhas nor monks need to ring bells, chant sutras, or eat. Just hearing this sent a chill down the spines of Ning Chu Shui and Lu Renfeng. After 3 days in Deng Ying Temple, they had realized that everything within was demonic and monstrous, not true monks at all. Becoming a Buddha was their obsession. They would do anything, no matter how insane, to achieve it. The temple rules for the monks were, in truth, a restraint, and also a protection for ghost guests like them. Once someone became a Buddha in Deng Ying Temple, the rules would lose their power. Then what kind of terrifying punishment would they face? At that point, of the 4 survivors, at least 3 more would surely die. Benefactors need not worry too much. At least today, no one will become a Buddha. Fa Hua pressed his palms together, his heavy voice carrying a hint of reassurance. Lu Renfeng digested Fa Hua's words, then suddenly looked up and asked, Little monk, when did this temple's tradition of becoming a Buddha begin? Boiling hearts and livers, flaying skin and stripping flesh. Such terrifying and eerie methods had nothing to do with becoming a Buddha. Lu Renfeng was genuinely shocked. What kind of twisted genius had come up with this method of achieving Buddhahood through ripping out hearts and peeling off skin? In response to his question, the little monk Fa Hua did not evade. Slowly, he recounted the events that had transpired long ago at Deng Ying Temple. It began with the generation of Dharma Master Hui Pu, the first to become a Buddha. My master was responsible for chopping firewood and cooking in the temple. He was already very old. Before he passed away, he told me a secret about Dharma Master Hui Pu. They say that Dharma Master Hui Pu had a connection with Buddhism from a young age. He became a monk at 10, spending his entire life studying scriptures and the Dharma. But even on his deathbed, he could not comprehend the Great Way, could not form a relic, could not attain Buddhahood. Perhaps unable to bear the shock or unable to accept this truth, Dharma Master Hui Pu began to descend into madness in his old age. According to my master, Dharma Master Hui Pu used every means possible to become a Buddha. But nothing he did could make him a Buddha, until the day he was too frail to move, lying in bed, kept alive only by monks chanting sutras and feeding him porridge. He made a decision both insane and terrifying. He wanted to imitate the Buddha's act of cutting his flesh to feed the eagle. He ordered all his own flesh to be cut off, minced, and then fed to the monks in the temple. And the one tasked with this was my master. Hearing this, Lu Renfeng's skin crawled. Heavens, was that old man insane? This isn't cutting flesh to feed the eagle at all. What the hell is this? Even if he wanted to imitate it, shouldn't he have fed his flesh to wild beasts? Fa Hua looked at Lu Renfeng with a profound gaze. Benefactor Lu speaks the truth. My master asked Dharma Master Hui Pu the very same question back then. But Benefactor Lu, do you know what Dharma Master Hui Pu replied? Lu Renfeng, unnerved by Fa Hua's stare, shook his head. What did he say? Fa Hua slowly uttered a horrifying sentence. The master said, add incense to the porridge. As long as they eat this porridge, then they are the wild beasts. That calm statement made Ningqiu Shui and Li Renfeng's hair stand on end. Then, did your master actually do it? Fa Hua was silent for a long time. Then he nodded gently. He took the knife and cut the abbot's flesh. According to my master, Dharma Master Hui Pu felt no pain. He smiled from beginning to end, and even in death, that mad, eerie smile remained on his face. In the end, the porridge was cooked. Seeing Fa Hua's expression, Ningqiu Shui had already guessed the outcome, but he still asked, did anyone drink it? Fa Hua, everyone except my master. That day, Dharma Master Hui Pu became a Buddha. The entire temple celebrated. The first golden statue in the main hall had passed down the method of becoming a Buddha through a dream. Li Renfeng's eyes bulged in disbelief. Real or fake? That's how you become a Buddha? Fuck. He couldn't help but curse. That old bastard didn't become a Buddha. What he became is anyone's guess. Ningqiu Shui shook his head. The root of Deng Ying Temple's problem had been found. It could be said that the obsession with becoming a Buddha, shared by all the monks now, had all been influenced by Dharma Master Hui Pu. Pausing, Ningqiu Shui seemed to realize something. So, little monk, the meat porridge we ate, was it you who cooked it? Beside him, Lu Renfeng's expression instantly turned to shock. The little monk's master once performed this duty, but now his master is gone. So it falls to the little monk to take over. Facing Ningqiu Shui's question, Fa Hua let out a sigh, making no attempt to hide the truth. This humble monk is guilty, but this is the abbot's command. I cannot disobey. For hundreds of li around, Deng Ying Temple is the only monastery. If they expel me, I would have nowhere to go. Ningqiu Shui shook her head. There is no need to apologize. Your master once warned us. From his standpoint, he did everything he could to help. A flicker of emotion passed through Fa Hua's eyes. He pressed his palms together and bowed his head in gratitude. The benefactor is willing to forgive this humble monk. I am deeply grateful. Ningqiu Shui added, enough with the formalities. If the young master truly wishes to thank us, then tell us how to leave this temple. Hearing this, a bitter expression spread across Fa Hua's face. This humble monk does not know either. The temple gates have been sealed by them. I cannot push them open. If I ever find a way to leave this temple, I will inform both benefactors first. Ningqiu Shui gave a slight nod. Then, thank you. Nightfall came swiftly. The four gathered in the dining hall, eating their congee. The candlelight flickered, casting an eerie, unsettling glow over the room. Today, darkness had fallen unusually fast. Before 6 o'clock, the sun had already vanished behind the mountains. The four sat around a single table, eating in silence. No one spoke first. Ningqiu Shui and Li Renfeng remained calm, their expressions unchanged. But Dan Hong and Shen Wei could not bear it. After learning the secrets of this temple, they felt a deep unease, as if a pair of unseen eyes were watching them from the shadows. The monks at the neighboring tables stared at them with hostility. What had once been curiosity and greed had now turned into pure hatred. They seemed to resent the four for ruining the shared celebration, forcing them to continue their vegetarian fast and prayers today. But soon, the monks left. They had their own strict schedule to follow. After they departed, the dining hall felt even more empty. Compared to the 8 people on the first day, now only half remained. The dark, hollow space made everyone feel unsafe. There's one question that's been bothering us for a long time. Shen Wei rubbed her temples, her voice laced with frustration. Go on, Ningqiu Shui said, leaning back slightly in her chair. Isn't it true that 2 monks were supposed to attain Buddhahood? On the first and second days, the abbot and another monk disappeared. If Big Beard had already pierced the kasaya of one of them, then the other should have become a Buddha, right? Shen Wei and Dan Hong were not without their own thoughts. In fact, they had their own worries. Ah! Liu Renfeng slapped his thigh, his voice suddenly rising. That means we've overlooked him. Shen Weiwei and Dan Hong suddenly brought up this issue, making him feel a surge of fear. Your concerns are not unfounded. In theory, there were indeed 2 monks who attained Buddhahood this time. One is the abbot, and the other is the monk who disappeared on the 2nd day. But perhaps something happened that we don't know about, causing that other monk to be unable to achieve Buddhahood. Otherwise, those monks just now wouldn't have looked at us with such eyes. At least tonight, we won't have to face the Crimson Door's most terrifying punishment. But we still can't let our guard down, Ning Chushui spoke slowly. Shen Weiwei's face was pale. She bit her lip and said, "How about we all stay in the same room tonight? Let's bring all the candles from the other rooms into one room and light 2 at a time." This time, Ning Chushui did not refuse her suggestion. The other 2, though they didn't seem completely trustworthy, at least they showed no signs of wanting to harm anyone. Staying together would surely be a little safer. They returned to room 1 together, silently waiting for Fahua to bring them the red candles. But tonight, they waited for 2 whole hours, and Fahua never showed up. The little monk, who was always punctual in bringing them red candles every nightfall, had suddenly vanished. What time is it? Why hasn't the little monk come yet? Waiting endlessly for the little monk Fahua, Dan Hong grew anxious. He paced back and forth in the room, checking the time on his phone. From their experience over the past 2 nights, they understood very well that the red candles the little monk gave them were crucial for surviving the night. But tonight, there were no candles. Darkness was the stage for the temple's ghosts. Without candles, how were they supposed to fight them off? "Do either of you have any leftover candles from last night?" Ning Chushui asked casually. Both of them shook their heads. "The candles last night were shorter than before. They didn't last long enough. We burned them until they went out, and it was still dark. Luckily, nothing happened." Shen Weiwei said, then looked at Ning Chushui with surprise. "Don't tell me you 2 have some left?" Ning Chushui pulled a pile of candles out of her bag, leaving the other 2 gaping in shock. "You 2 are truly my saviors. But hey, where did you get so many candles?" Dan Hong asked, both astonished and excited. "Where else could they come from? We took them from the other rooms. This amount is enough for us to burn for 2 nights, with some left over for the final 2 nights." Liu Renfeng said, then took out a match and struck it. A flame flickered at the tip, lighting a red candle that was already more than half burned. Ning Chushui took the candle and walked around the room, searching every nook and cranny. "Xiao Gei, what are you looking for?" Liu Renfeng asked. Ning Chushui spoke slowly. "I'm checking if there's a ghost hiding in the room. Have you forgotten last night when Chai Shan suddenly walked out of the room on his own?" Liu Renfeng hadn't noticed this detail, but after Ning Chushui's reminder, a cold sweat broke out on his back. That was right. When there were candles in the room, those ghosts couldn't sneak in silently. The only way they could enter was by breaking down the door. But if something had already been hiding in the room before they entered, wouldn't tonight be extremely dangerous? Something's wrong. Ning Chushui's eyes swept across every corner of the room. A sense of unease crept over him, making his skin crawl. "Hey, Big Beard, light another candle. Everyone, help search. I keep feeling there's something in this room." Survivors from chaotic zones often had a sharper sense for life-and-death moments than ordinary people. Whenever something threatened Ning Chushui's life, he became especially alert. Liu Renfeng always trusted Ning Chushui. Hearing this, he immediately lit several more candles and handed them to the 2 people beside him. "Take these. Search on your own." The 2 took the candles from Liu Renfeng. The flames seemed to give them a sense of security, making their faces look less pale than before. They held the candles and searched the entire room. Finally, Shen Weiwei's trembling voice came from a corner near the bed. "Everyone, come here and look." The other 3 in the room immediately walked to the corner where Shen Weiwei was standing. This place was very hidden. Because it was the dead angle between the bed and the window, blocked by a small wooden cabinet, outsiders couldn't get in. Under the dim candlelight, they saw a chamber pot in that pitch-black corner. A chamber pot. At first, there was nothing unusual about a chamber pot in a room, but its position was strange. Even if they used a chamber pot, they wouldn't hide it away like a tea set. So why was it here? In the Crimson Door, anything strange could easily make people nervous. Ning Shui signaled everyone to step back, then used his foot to pull the chamber pot out. Under the candlelight, the chamber pot in front of them had a lid on it. Ning Shui carefully opened the lid. A pale face appeared inside the chamber pot. Damn it! The three beside him jumped back a step, but because they had mentally prepared themselves, they quickly regained their composure. Lu Renfeng stepped forward and cursed at the face in the chamber pot. Hey, there are plenty of seats in this room. Can't they hold you? Why do you have to hide in there? You're already a ghost, and you're still this filthy. This scolding truly angered the face in the chamber pot. Its expression suddenly became extremely painful, and it struggled incessantly, as if trying to break free from the pot. Damn it, this thing doesn't like being talked about. As soon as Lu Renfeng finished speaking, cracks appeared on the surface of the chamber pot. Thick, fresh blood seeped out from those cracks. At the same time, the temperature in the room began to drop. Thump! A dark figure appeared outside, standing still at the window. Inside the room, the candle flames in everyone's hands flickered violently, as if they were about to go out at any moment. It's coming out. Should we throw it outside? Shen Weiwei, who had just calmed down a little thanks to Lu Renfeng's words, tensed up again. Ning Shui stared at the shadow outside the window, her gaze sharper than a blade. Throw the chamber pot out, or not. If they didn't throw it, the face inside would crawl out immediately, and once it was out, would something even more horrifying happen? If they did throw it, they would have to open the door or the window. But the black shadow standing outside was pressing down on them with an immense, suffocating weight. It felt like they were facing a moment of life and death. Ah! The face let out a miserable, rasping groan. The chamber pot began to crack. Pieces of old, rusted iron fell to the floor, one by one, like withered autumn leaves. The situation was truly dire. The other two, having no ghost artifacts on them, were frozen in place, dumbstruck and terrified, not knowing what to do. Seeing that the face was about to break free, Ning Shui said to Dan Hong, "You hold the pot. Throw it out. I'll open the window in a moment." Dan Hong heard Ning Shui call his name and stood there, petrified. Huh? Me? No time! Hurry! He lowered his head and stared at the horrifyingly pale face inside the pot. Suddenly he remembered, wasn't this the monk who had disappeared on the second day? Dan Hong trembled in fear at the ferocious expression on that face. He stumbled back a few steps, frantically waving his hands. No! It's about to come out. If I hold it now, I'll be asking for death. His reaction made Shen Weiwei, standing nearby, frown. Gritting her teeth, Shen Weiwei shouted, "Open the window!" She didn't know where she found the courage. Maybe it was from the guilt she felt toward her deceased boyfriend, or maybe it was her trust in Ning Shui. This time, she wasn't timid anymore. Ning Shui opened the window. Shen Weiwei shut her eyes and hurled the chamber pot out with all her strength. She didn't dare look at the black shadow standing right outside their window. Thud! Just as Shen Weiwei breathed a sigh of relief and started to step back into the room, a cold, pale white hand suddenly shot in from outside the window and grabbed her wrist. Shen Weiwei screamed at the top of her lungs. She struggled desperately to pull back, but the hand gripping her wrist was like an iron shackle. No matter how hard she fought, it was useless. At the same time, it was pulling her outside. Shen Weiwei was light, and she didn't train like Bai Xiaoxiao. How could she resist the black shadow outside the window? She stumbled and fell toward the window. If her body hadn't gotten stuck on the sill, she would have been dragged out of the room. Terrified beyond words, Shen Weiwei screamed for Ning Shui's help. "Save me!" Ning Shui didn't hesitate. She pulled out the old shamaness's ancient book. This book had one last use left. He pulled out the ancient tome and slammed it against the owner of the arm. Thick, viscous blood dripped from the book, accompanied by the old witch's agonized growls. In life, she had committed many evils, and she herself had endured great suffering, especially at the end, when the female ghost crushed her into a lump of flesh and hair. The mere memory of that process made Ning Shui and Lu Renfeng shudder. The dense resentment seemed to grant her a terrible power. Outside, it was pitch black. Even Ning Shui, standing by the window, couldn't make out what was happening. The four people in the room only heard a single, blood-curdling scream from outside, and then the hand gripping Shen Weiwei let go. Shen Weiwei, paralyzed with fear, couldn't stay on her feet. She tumbled into the room, screaming as she rolled. Ning Shui, still by the window, seized the moment to slam it shut. At the same time, he placed a burning candle into a cabinet in front of the window. Li Renfeng held Shen Weiwei, feeling her tremble uncontrollably in his arms. He couldn't help but mutter, "Look at this girl, scared stiff, she's practically convulsing." She shook for a long time before finally calming down. In a trembling voice, she thanked Li Renfeng, then sat down on the bed by herself. "What did you see just now?" Ning Shui glanced at her. Shen Weiwei recalled what had happened. The terror in her eyes hadn't faded. She swallowed hard and said, "I saw a face. A very old, very terrifying face. Its gaze, it was truly horrifying, like it wanted to devour me alive." Ning Shui asked, "Was it the abbot we met on the first day?" At Ning Shui's prompting, Shen Weiwei jolted. She nodded. "Yes, it was him." Ning Shui let out a cold laugh. "That man, he's so desperate to become a Buddha, he's gone mad. The eagle eats my flesh, I skin the eagle. We haven't even eaten his flesh yet, and he can't wait to skin us." The moment he finished speaking, a violent pounding came from outside the door. Bam! Bam! The force was so strong the entire room shook. "Big Beard, block the door!" Ning Shui shouted at Li Renfeng. His face darkened, and he rushed to the door. "It's my turn again." With his nearly 200 jin weight, he stood against the door, and it immediately felt much sturdier. Bam! The abbot outside seemed to be growing impatient. He increased his strength. This time, the force was truly overwhelming. It nearly sent Li Renfeng, who was bracing the door from the inside, flying. The candles in the room flickered violently, as if affected by some invisible force. "The candles are about to go out!" Dan Hong cried out in panic. "What are you blabbering for? Are we blind? Get over here and help me block the door." Li Renfeng glared at the brat hiding deep in the room, his anger beyond words. Shen Weiwei, a girl, had dared to run to the window and throw the chamber pot, but this bastard was hiding in the back, just watching the show. If Li Renfeng weren't stuck holding the door, he'd have kicked him twice. Dan Hong saw the murderous look in Li Renfeng's eyes. Terrified as he was, he had no choice but to run over and, trembling, help him block the door. Bam! 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 Outside, the abbot pounded on the door with a frenzy, each tremor stronger than the last. "You, why? Won't you let me become a Buddha? Why? These past days I have served you fine food and sweet tea. Why do you not appreciate it? Why? What crime have I committed against you that you would harm me so?" He was outside, weeping bitterly one moment, laughing madly the next. "Open the door, open the door. I only lack one kasaya, just one kasaya. I beg you, open the door, open the door. Let me become Buddha." These mad words poured endlessly from the abbot's mouth, growing more resentful and deranged with each passing moment. "If I become a Buddha, won't you all be bathed in my radiant light? If I become a Buddha, won't you all ascend to heaven? If I become a Buddha, I will surely not treat you poorly. We will share the fruits of Buddhahood. I am the Buddha, and you will all benefit." He was too loud. Li Renfeng finally couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "You old bald fraud, what nonsense are you spouting? With a face like yours, you want to become a Buddha? At best, you'll become a monkey." Hearing this, the abbot suddenly stopped pounding on the door, his voice filled with profound sorrow. "They could all become Buddhas. Why can't I? Do you know how long we have waited for this day? Finally, it is my turn. I have waited so many years, finally. I beg you, grant me a kasaya, let me become a Buddha." Having said this, he knelt down and kowtowed to the four people inside the room. Thump! 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 He repeatedly smashed his head against the hard bluestone floor. The sound made the heads of the four people in the room ache. They could almost imagine the bloody scene outside the door at this moment. With each violent kowtow from the abbot, the hearts of those in the room gradually filled with pity. At this moment, Li Renfeng was the first to sense something was wrong. He noticed the other three had softened, dreamy expressions and shouted, "Don't believe his nonsense." This ghost is affecting our minds. He wants to skin us alive." The other three weren't deeply affected. Jolted by Lu Renfeng's reminder, they immediately snapped back to alertness. Seeing the lingering, dazed look on each other's faces, a chill ran down their spines. A ghost kowtowing. Unless it was to repay a kindness, the living could not withstand it. However, their clarity was only temporary. The others' influence on their minds remained, and with each kowtow from the abbot outside, that influence deepened. Before long, Dan Hong's eyes began to glaze over. "No, he's so pitiful. Maybe we should help him a little." Lu Renfeng glanced at him. "Fine, you go on out then." Hearing this, Dan Hong actually stood up and walked toward the door. Seeing his soulless movements, Lu Renfeng was so terrified his hair stood on end, and he hurriedly pulled him back. "Damn it, you jinx, you really pulled a stupid stunt. If you want to die alone, fine, but don't drag us down with you." If he actually got out and became the Kasaya for the abbot to attain Buddhahood, they'd be in serious trouble. Right now, they had to stop the monk in the temple from becoming a Buddha at all costs. That's right. He's been waiting so many years just to become a Buddha. How pitiful. Maybe we should help him fulfill his wish. Shen Wei said this too, her eyes flickering with an unreadable light. "Big Beard, is there any way to deal with this?" Ning Chushui's expression was grim. His willpower was clearly stronger than the other two's, but if this kept up, he didn't know how much longer he could hold on. Lu Renfeng's face twisted into a strange expression. "There's one stupid way to deal with a kowtowing ghost." Ning Chushui asked. "What way?" Lu Renfeng coughed. "Kowtow back." Lu Renfeng immediately walked over to the bed, folded the bedding into 3 layers, placed it on the floor, then pulled Dan Hong and Shen Wei to their knees in front of him. Before they completely lost control, he said, "Kowtow." The two weren't fully possessed yet, so they began kowtowing along with the abbot outside the door. A while later, just as all 4 felt like their heads were about to rattle off, Ning Chushui finally said, "All right, stop kowtowing. It's gone." The 3 of them lifted their heads groggily, their vision darkening for a long moment before they came back to their senses. "Gone?" Lu Renfeng's eyes were bloodshot. "No way, it was so aggressive just now. Come on, let's keep kowtowing. That was barely anything. I could kowtow all day." Ning Chushui watched his eager expression and couldn't help but press a hand to his forehead. Just as Lu Renfeng had said, this was indeed a stupid method. It worked, but it came with side effects. Addiction. About 10 minutes later, the 3 of them had mostly returned to normal. They stared into the darkness outside the window, all silent. No one knew if tonight would bring more surprises. Though it was late, none of them dared to relax. "Do you think we'll make it out of here alive?" Dan Hong's voice was thick with fear. He was completely different from when they first arrived. Back then, Dan Hong had been relatively calm. Facing the strange occurrences, he'd still had his own judgments and responses. But now, his courage seemed spent. Ning Chushui looked at him without surprise. A person's ability to control their emotions was finite. Some people, when faced with unexpected situations, appeared calm on the surface, but it was just suppression. If it continued, they'd eventually collapse under the weight of their growing fear. Others, who lacked emotional control, would break under fear, but then develop an immunity to it. Bai Xiaoxiao and Lu Renfeng were perfect examples. Sometimes, acceptance and adaptation were better than resistance. "It's okay. As long as we get through tonight, we only have one final night left to survive." Shen Wei tried to comfort him, but her voice trembled as well. "You're scared too, aren't you?" Dan Hong tilted his head to look at Shen Wei, then turned to Lu Renfeng, who sat slumped with his head down beside them. "Big Beard, are you scared? Big Beard?" Dan Hong called out to Lu Renfeng several times, but the man never answered. This made Dan Hong uneasy. Carefully, he reached out and poked Lu Renfeng, only to discover the guy had fallen asleep. Dan Hong heard the faint sound of snoring coming from Lu Renfeng and fell silent for a moment. Damn it. Who can sleep in a situation like this? Should I say he has a strong mentality, or is he just too bold? Dan Hong sighed, then shifted his gaze to Ning Chushui. In his eyes, this man was the most reliable person present. From start to finish, he had shown no sign of panic, and he seemed to carry quite a few ghost artifacts on him. Though Dan Hong didn't ask out loud, he guessed in his heart that Ning Chu Shui must be an expert who had passed through several doors behind him and had brought Lu Renfeng along to clear the door with him. Thinking this, he felt a little more at ease, and his fear subsided somewhat. "Brother Chu Shui, tonight, it should be safe, right?" Dan Hong asked. Ning Shui glanced at him and shook his head. "Not necessarily. Besides, how to survive tonight and tomorrow isn't the biggest problem we face. The real problem before us now is how to find a way to leave this temple. If we reach the 5th day and still don't know how to get out of here, I'm afraid there will be 2 very troublesome possibilities." Hearing this, both Dan Hong and Shen Weiwei showed clear fear on their faces. Ning Chu Shui said nothing more, but was pondering a question. Where had the little monk, Fa Hua, gone? He absolutely would not have vanished without reason. The chance of him dying unexpectedly was also low. After all, Fa Hua had lived in this temple for many years. Ning Chu Shui sifted through every possibility in his mind. Finally, recalling the words the little monk Fa Hua had said to them during the day, a flash of insight struck him. Could it be that the little monk had gone to find a way to leave the temple? The little monk surely knew this temple far better than they did. If the little monk agreed to help them find a way out of the temple, their chances of survival would increase dramatically. If they continued like this, it would definitely not end well. No matter how many ghost artifacts they had brought into this crimson door, each person could only activate them 3 times. Relying solely on ghost artifacts, how long could they hold out against the ghosts in the temple? Our candles are all burned out for today. Tomorrow night, we might not have enough. Just now, the ghost outside breaking down the door seemed to make the candles burn faster. Shen Weiwei's voice was low and heavy. She sat in the corner of the room, hugging her knees, her hair slightly disheveled. Ning Chu Shui and Dan Hong looked at the burning candle. That was right. The burning speed of the candle had increased. This is definitely related to the abbot breaking down the door earlier. It also proves the importance of the red candles. "Have you 2 ever been to the temple's kitchen?" Ning Chu Shui asked. Shen Weiwei and Dan Hong both shook their heads. Although the temple had a dining hall, neither of them had ever seen the kitchen. After all, every time the little monk came to call them for a meal, the food was already laid out in the dining hall. The shadow outside the window had vanished, but the occasional flicker of the candle flame kept everyone on edge. They stared at the window with suspicion. The darkness outside seemed to want to seep into the room, carried by the cold air slipping through the window cracks. After a long silence, Shen Weiwei suddenly spoke. "Actually, on the 2nd day, I saw the little monk heading to a desolate place. It was very secluded, on the western side of the temple." Hearing this, a flicker of movement crossed Ning Chu Shui's eyes. "Fa Hua?" Shen Weiwei nodded. "I'm not sure if it was the kitchen, though. We'll go check it out tomorrow." Ning Chu Shui said. "Why do you want to go to the kitchen?" "There might be more clues about Fa Hua and his master there. I want to take a look." Shen Weiwei did not refuse. She also had no right to refuse. Without Ning Chu Shui here, she wouldn't have known what to do anyway. Perhaps it was the effect of the rules, or maybe the abbot had been stunned from knocking his head so much that he didn't appear again. Everyone managed to drift through the 3rd night. At 6 in the morning, the alarm clock rang. The dawn light arrived right on schedule, dispelling the thick fog within the temple. But the temple bell did not ring. The 4 people in the room waited for a long time. It was around 9 o'clock, when sunlight had already flooded every corner of the temple, that Ning Chu Shui and the others finally left the room. Why didn't the little monk ring the bell today? Suddenly not hearing his bell feels a bit strange. Lu Renfeng was still drowsy and let out a yawn. The 4 of them, led by Shen Weiwei, headed towards the desolate western part of the temple. That place was truly too desolate. The surroundings were nothing but rubble and weeds. On the ground, many dried bloodstains remained, looking extremely eerie. Following the trail of blood, a foul smell wafted faintly in the air. It was related to humans. On the barren land, a winding path led to a simple, small house. Ning Chu Shui walked up to the house and slowly pushed the door open. A faint, fragrant smell drifted out from inside. It was the smell of meat porridge. Fahua? Little monk? They tried calling out a few times, but there was no reply from inside the room. Fahua was not there. Inside this room, there was a stove, a pile of firewood, and a bed. No way! This little monk actually sleeps here? Liu Renfeng muttered. He touched the bed in the kitchen. It was quite clean. Beside the pillow, there were a few volumes of scripture. It was clear that someone had been sleeping on this bed. This place wasn't just a kitchen. To be more precise, it was a combination of a storeroom, a kitchen, and a bedroom. How strange. There are so many empty rooms in the temple. Why does the little monk sleep here? Dan Hong was full of doubt. There are two possibilities. First, the little monk is ostracized by the other monks in the temple and can only sleep here. Second, there's something important in the kitchen that he needs to guard. Ning Chu Shui finished speaking, his gaze sweeping across the room. Everyone, search around. Though it was already daylight outside, the light inside this room wasn't great, leaving some corners quite dim. Fortunately, Liu Renfeng always carried matches with him. As the matchlight flickered, he seemed to notice something and tilted his head to call out to Ning Chu Shui by the bed. "Xiaoge, come take a look." Hearing this, Ning Chu Shui walked over to Liu Renfeng's side. He lit another candle and held it close to the ground. Both of them immediately saw 3 lines of black text on the floor. Shifu said, "Becoming a Buddha is the greatest lie in Deng Ying Temple. There are no Buddhas in this temple at all. It's all just the obsession of Abbot Hui Pu." Abbot Hui Pu? Ning Chu Shui's eyes flickered. The little monk had mentioned this person before, the source of the Buddha in Deng Ying Temple. No Buddha? Interesting. If there's no Buddha, then what did those monks in the temple eventually become? Ning Chu Shui's gaze suddenly stopped on the bed where the little monk slept. There were scriptures placed there. He walked over, picked one up, and opened it. Inside was a special bamboo slip. On it was written, "I am the first tooth in its mouth, you are the second tooth. If you don't want to become flesh, help it eat flesh." This slip was very old. The yellowed stains were marks of time. Looking at it, the first person who came to Ning Chu Shui's mind was the little monk's Shifu. The clues on the slip revealed a great deal. Teeth and flesh. Is this the little monk's survival rule in the temple? The ghosts in the temple don't attack the little monk. Could this be the reason? In an instant, many thoughts flashed through Ning Chu Shui's mind. Instinctively, he flipped the slip over and found another line of text on the back. But the ink on this side was much fresher than the front. Teeth. How do you open the door? The handwriting on the back was completely different from the front. Clearly, one was written by the little monk and the other by his Shifu. Last night, the little monk indeed went looking for a way to open the door. I just don't know if he found it and where he is now. As Ning Chu Shui was lost in thought, Dan Hong suddenly walked over, looking a bit embarrassed, and said, "Sorry to interrupt, but could someone come with me to the restroom?" The 3 of them all looked at him. Dan Hong's face flushed slightly and he coughed twice. "Ah, you know how it is. 3 urgent matters. Going alone would be too dangerous. I'll go with you." Ning Chu Shui shot a glance at Liu Renfeng, signaling him to stay with Shen Wei and not wander off. Dan Hong grinned sheepishly. Good. Thank you, Shuige." The 2 arrived at the nearest latrine. Ning Chu Shui stood outside and said to him, "Hurry up." Dan Hong nodded lightly. "Okay." He immediately entered the latrine, unbuckled his belt, and began to relieve his sorrow. He must have eaten something he shouldn't have. His stomach churned with an uncomfortable gurgle. He squatted over the pit, straining with all his might. The entire latrine had almost no ventilation. It was built entirely of wood and tiles, with weeds sprouting wildly in some corners. The only source of light came from the doorway 5 steps away. This made the whole place not only pitch dark, but also damp and humid, the air thick with the foul stench of feces and urine. Truth be told, anyone with even a shred of cleanliness would feel deeply uncomfortable squatting in such a latrine. Dan Hong was no exception. At this moment, he squatted there, feeling that everything was wrong. Just as he was straining, something suddenly dripped onto his head from above. Cold and slimy. Dan Hong's body went rigid the moment the liquid touched him. When is a person at their most vulnerable? Naturally, when they are relieving their sorrow. Dan Hong could not accept being killed by a ghost in such a situation. What was that liquid that had just dripped onto his head? Was there something above him? In that instant, countless terrifying thoughts flashed through Dan Hong's mind. He stiffly raised a finger, touched the drop of liquid on his forehead, then brought it to his nose to sniff. Immediately, his face turned pale. Confirmed, it was the smell of blood. Why was blood dripping from above? He rigidly lifted his head, and his pupils suddenly constricted. Although the environment inside the latrine was extremely dark, after his eyes adjusted to the gloom, he could barely make out the shapes within. When Dan Hong looked up, he discovered a skinless corpse hanging directly above his head. This sight terrified him beyond words. The next moment, he let out a blood-curdling scream. He didn't even have time to pull up his pants before he bolted out of the latrine. Seeing Dan Hong stumble out in panic, Ning Shui felt somewhat exasperated. Dan Hong, where did you leave your bird? Perhaps because he had spent too much time with Lu Renfeng, Ning Shui had also become sharp-tongued. And also, did you even wipe your ass clean? A faint, unpleasant odor wafted through the air. Dan Hong was mortified, but he still pointed a trembling finger at the latrine and stammered to Ning Shui. Shui Gay, there's a dead body in the latrine. No, it's a corpse. Hearing this, Ning Shui's gaze sharpened. A corpse? But no one died last night. How could there be a corpse? Whose body is it? Dan Hong shook his head, his lips nearly drained of blood. I don't know. Its skin has been completely flayed off. Besides, it was too dark inside. I couldn't recognize it. Ning Shui looked at Dan Hong's trembling legs and said, Clean yourself up quickly, then come back in with me. We'll drag the body out. Hearing this, Dan Hong was terrified. No, it can't be, right? We still have to go in there? But there are walking corpses inside. Seeing the terror on his face, Ning Shui shook her head. You're a man. How can you be more cowardly than Shen Wei? During the day, the temple isn't that dangerous. Besides, there are two of us. The chances of running into trouble are lower. We don't have much time left. Hearing this, Dan Hong swallowed hard, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and gritted his teeth. Let's go! I'm coming with you, Shui Gay. He hurriedly found some leaves, wiped the grime off his body, and followed Ning Shui into the restroom. Ning Shui gathered some tools from the storage room, then lowered the corpse from the rafters. They carried the body back to the kitchen. Lu Renfeng and Shen Wei were still discussing the charcoal writing on the floor. When they saw Ning Shui hauling in a blood-soaked, skinless corpse, both of them jumped in shock. Heavens, Xiaogei, what happened here? None of us died last night. Where did this body come from? Ning Shui shook his head. I don't know either. He set the body down by the door. The four of them studied it for a while. Any thoughts? Ning Shui asked the other three. Their faces were grim. All of them had a sinking suspicion about whose body this was. Without the skin, we can't be completely certain, but judging by the build, it might be the little monk, Fa Hua. Shen Wei took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. Lu Renfeng pointed at the scalp area of the corpse. I'm leaning toward it being Fa Hua's body too. We still have hair on our heads. When the temple's ghosts flay us, they don't take the scalp. But this time, they took the scalp too. This body is clearly bald. And the height and build match. It's very likely the little monk. Lu Renfeng's words were cautious. In truth, he was 100% certain this corpse belonged to Fa Hua. But the little monk was, in some ways, a pillar of hope for everyone. Lu Renfeng feared that if the other two learned of his death, their spirits would shatter. But they handled it better than he expected. So the little monk died last night? He died before dark. That's why he never came to give us the candles. Dan Hong stared at the blood-soaked body on the floor. His mind was blank. Beyond fear, there was only confusion. The little monk was dead. Who would bring them candles now? They still had a few spare candles, but not enough to last through the night. The little monk didn't die last night. Ning Shui spoke, his voice firm. He reached out, squeezed the corpse's muscles, moved its joints, and examined the clotting of the blood. The little monk died less than 2 hours ago. He died this morning. Hearing this, the other three were stunned. Within 2 hours, that means he died after 6 in the morning? But the temple's ghosts don't seem to be active after 6 in the morning. Ning Chushui carefully examined the corpse. Then suddenly, as if discovering something, she murmured, "That's right. The skin on the little monk's body wasn't peeled off by a ghost. The technique is completely different. When a ghost peels skin, it leaves almost no excess marks. But this corpse is covered in countless knife wounds. Whoever did this, to peel the skin intact, even cut away part of the muscle, many tendons were severed. This isn't the work of a ghost. The skin on the little monk's body was peeled by a human." The moment Ning Chushui finished speaking, everyone in the room fell into a deathly silence. Being skinned by a ghost and being skinned by a human were two completely different things. Being skinned by a ghost, though it looked horrifying and cruel, was actually not that painful. Lu Nanshang had made that very clear earlier. But being skinned by a human, without anesthesia, how excruciating would that pain be? Everyone present shuddered. They stared at the corpse on the ground, and an inexplicable chill rose from the soles of their feet. Suddenly, they remembered the large, still wet bloodstains on the open ground outside the kitchen. At first, they thought those bloodstains belonged to the victims, but now, it seemed, all of it was the blood of the little monk, Fa Hua. Looking at the gruesome bloodstains scattered across the ground, their minds couldn't help but conjure the image of how much suffering Fa Hua must have endured before his death. "I have a question." Dan Hong's voice trembled as he spoke. "Logically speaking, besides the 4 of us, there are no other living people in the temple. The other monks are all ghosts, right? And last night, the 4 of us were all in our rooms, so who skinned the little monk? Could it be that the little monk skinned himself?" Dan Hong's question plunged everyone into silence. That was right. Besides them, who else in the temple was alive? Those other monks were clearly problematic. If it wasn't the work of a ghost, then who had skinned Fa Hua? Everyone was filled with doubt. "What do we do with the body now?" After a long silence, Shen Weiwei asked, "Just leave it here?" Ning Chushui pondered for a moment, then said, "Bring the corpse back to our room." "Bring it back to our room? Aren't you afraid it'll turn into a walking corpse?" Dan Hong disagreed. He felt it was too dangerous. "If I say bring it, then bring it. Stop talking so much. If you're scared it'll turn into a walking corpse, then go sleep in the next room tonight," Lu Renfeng said irritably. "There aren't any candles in the next room." Lu Renfeng casually tossed him a hammer. Dan Hong didn't understand. "What is this? What do you mean? Trying to scare me?" "Scare your head. I'm giving you the hammer so you can break through the wall and steal some candles." Dan Hong looked at the hammer in his hand and swallowed hard. "Big Beard, where did you get this?" "None of your business where I got it. Give it back to me when you're done. Hurry up and go break that wall." Dan Hong held the hammer, hesitated for a moment, then carefully handed it back to Lu Renfeng. Fine. I'll go move the corpse." He sighed, reluctantly dragging the dead body back to their room. By noon, it was time for lunch. But today, the little monk didn't bring food to the dining hall, nor did any other monks appear. They seemed to know the little monk was dead, that no one would cook porridge for them, so they had hidden themselves away, refusing to show up. This time, the vast dining hall was utterly silent. The 4 of them sat there, frowning. This was the 4th crimson door. Logically, the exit shouldn't be too well hidden, but how were they supposed to open the temple gate? The main gate won't budge, and climbing the wall is impossible. How about we try digging a tunnel this afternoon? Dan Hong's eyes were bloodshot. That morning, they had gone to the main gate again. The door remained sealed shut. No matter how much force they used, it wouldn't open. The wall beside it was also impassable. Some mysterious force, like an invisible barrier, would push them back the moment they tried. Seeing that the 5th day was approaching, and they still hadn't found a way to leave the temple, their anxiety slowly turned into despair. Dan Hong stared at the temple wall in the distance. They were only 1 wall away from freedom. That doesn't make sense. You can't climb the wall, but you think you can dig a tunnel? Lu Renfeng's voice dripped with mockery. Dan Hong's eyes grew even redder. "This won't work. That won't work. Then what do you suggest we do? Wait to die?" Lu Renfeng shot him a cold glance. "If you're still like this at the 4th crimson door, even if you survive this one, you won't make it through the next. Hearing this, Dan Hong became even more agitated. Fine, I'm useless, but I just want to live in peace. Is that wrong? There are so many people out there. Why did it choose me? Li Renfeng sighed. This guy was completely consumed by fear. It would take a while for him to snap out of it. Don't be so pessimistic. The Crimson Door won't create a story where we're doomed to die. Even now, Ning Shui remained remarkably calm. After tonight, by tomorrow afternoon, we should be able to go back. Dan Hong seemed triggered by that word. Go back? How? We can't even get out of the temple gate. Shen Weiwei frowned. What are you yelling about? Don't you think we want to get out? We're all still here trying to find a way. We still have time. Dan Hong clenched his fists, his face dark. If you won't dig the tunnel, then I'll do it myself. If I can't climb the wall, I'll definitely be able to dig a tunnel. With that, he stormed off. Li Renfeng tried to stop him, but failed. Let him go. This time, Ning Shui didn't try to stop him. That was strange. Li Renfeng watched Dan Hong's retreating figure, his eyes wide as he said, Isn't it too dangerous to let him go alone now? What if something happens to him? The abbot nearly became a Buddha if he had succeeded. Before he could finish his sentence, Ning Shui suddenly interjected, He cannot become a Buddha. Or rather, from the very beginning, this door was destined to prevent the abbot from attaining Buddhahood. The two people in the room were stunned. They looked at Ning Shui with complex expressions. However, their thoughts were entirely different. Li Renfeng wondered if Xiao Ge had made another crucial discovery. Shen Weiwei, on the other hand, thought this guy might have been scared out of his wits. Why do you say that? Shen Wei wanted to hear Ning Shui's reasoning. He said, Why not think about it from the opposite direction? What would happen if the abbot actually became a Buddha? The entire temple would celebrate together. All of us would die. Ah, no. Probably one person would survive. Ning Shui nodded. Exactly. From what I learned about becoming a Buddha, both from my childhood and from the book, I've been thinking about one thing. There are 8 of us total. In theory, the abbot only needs the skin of one person to achieve Buddhahood. If he wasn't picky, then if just one of us was harmed, the remaining 7 would fall into utter despair. One person becomes a Buddha, and the whole temple celebrates together. Except for the person protected by the Crimson Door's hidden rule, everyone else would surely die. And the Crimson Door wouldn't design a story like this, at least not for the 4th door. Ning Shui finished speaking, watching the two people who seemed lost in thought, then continued, Do you still remember what our mission is? Li Renfeng slapped his thigh and said, That's impossible to forget. Our mission is, Hey Shen Weiwei, you tell Xiao Ge, what's our mission? Shen Weiwei's expression turned strange. Survive 5 days in Deng Ying Temple, and simultaneously find a way to leave Deng Ying Temple. As she spoke, she immediately understood the meaning behind Ning Shui's earlier words. She murmured, The danger we need to guard against and face in this Crimson Door is what the monks in the temple do before becoming Buddhas, not what happens after they become Buddhas. The Crimson Door has set a limit on them, making it impossible for them to achieve Buddhahood within these 5 days. That was never the abbot's intention at all. Realizing this, Shen Weiwei became extremely agitated. What was the abbot? A madman, someone who would stop at nothing to become a Buddha. A person like that would wish to become a Buddha immediately. How could he possibly be picky about the Kasaya? In the end, it was the Crimson Door that influenced him, leading to such behavior. So, we don't need to worry about the Buddhahood problem anymore? Li Renfeng was somewhat skeptical. In theory, there's no need to worry for 5 days. A pause hung in the air, thick with unspoken dread. If we can find a way to leave by the 5th day, then the matter of becoming a Buddha will no longer concern us. Li Renfeng let out a long, weary sigh. So, the biggest problem right now is still how to get out of this temple. To be honest, I can understand Dan Hong's despair. Up until now, we haven't found a single clue about leaving. The 5th day is almost here. He turned, his voice dropping to a tense whisper. Xiao Ge, do you have any ideas? Ning Shui's voice was calm, analytical. Not finding anything is normal. We're strangers to Deng Ying Temple while they've been hiding their secrets here for years. If the two of us could find a way out in just 3 tries, that would be the real ghost story. This trivial matter, it's clearly something the people inside the temple should handle. Liu Renfeng's brow furrowed. The little monk, Fa Hua? Ning Chushui nodded slowly. Yes, I followed the little monk before, for this very reason. I've thought about it for a long time. I always felt we couldn't find the way out on our own. We had to rely on that little monk. And his death is clearly connected to this. Shen Weiwei rubbed her face, her voice heavy with despair. But the problem is, the little monk is dead now. And he died in such an unclear way. We can't rely on him anymore. He didn't leave us any useful clues either. Ning Chushui's eyes narrowed. Fa Hua is not as simple as you think. You don't really believe he was an ordinary person like us, do you? Shen Weiwei froze, a chill creeping up her spine. The little monk wasn't an ordinary person. Ning Chushui pulled out a red candle, waving it slowly before her face. Can an ordinary person make this? If you've been paying attention, you'd notice all the candles in the temple are white. Only the ones the little monk gave us are red. These red candles clearly don't belong to the temple. He made them for us. So, the little monk may seem ordinary, but he is not an ordinary person. It's not hard to understand. He's lived in this temple for so many years. If he were human, he would have been turned into a kasaya long ago. Hearing this, Shen Weiwei felt a bone-piercing chill run down her spine. The thought that even the little monk wasn't human filled her with terror. If that little monk had intended to harm them. But if he wasn't human, why was he skinned? Ning Chushui's answer came slowly, deliberately. His skin may not have been taken by someone else. Shen Weiwei's eyes went wide. He skinned himself? Ning Chushui's voice was flat, certain, highly likely. The two beside them exchanged glances, confusion etched on their faces. Why would he skin himself? Ning Chushui was silent for a long, agonizing moment. I don't know either, but the little monk must have had his reasons. Perhaps tonight we will have our answer. Time slipped away like sand through fingers. Darkness fell quickly, swallowing the temple whole. Tonight, no little monk came with food. Having not eaten all day, everyone felt the gnawing hunger in their stomachs. Especially Dan Hong. He gripped his iron shovel and walked into the dining hall. His body was covered in dust and grime, his eyes bloodshot. The iron shovel, already old and worn, now bore several new cracks. It was enough to show just how hard Dan Hong had been digging that afternoon. Did you dig through? Liu Renfeng was also hungry now, too weak to mock him any further. Dan Hong's eyes were vacant, his expression exhausted. It took him a moment, as if he had just heard Liu Renfeng's words, before he shook his head. I can't get out. I dug in 3 places. None of them worked. And, as he spoke, he seemed to recall something terrifying, his eyes filling with fear. And this afternoon, the abbot appeared in the distance, staring at me. Every time I spotted him, he would vanish, then reappear somewhere else, still watching me. Liu Renfeng clicked his tongue. Well, that's a first. You're such a coward. Why didn't you run away? Dan Hong's face darkened. I wanted to run, believe me, but where could I go? At that moment, I thought, if I couldn't find a way out, I was dead anyway. I might as well take advantage of the daylight when they don't dare to act. Even as he said this, his legs trembled uncontrollably. Although the cafeteria had no food left, they still habitually sat there. Not until the sky outside was completely dark did Ning Chushui take out the red candles. He waited for Liu Renfeng to light them, and then the 4 of them walked together toward the dormitory. Tonight, they were still sleeping in room 1. Out of habit, they checked every corner of the room. Ning Chushui suddenly noticed an extra piece of paper under their pillow. On it was a familiar handwriting. Tonight, at the hour of the rat, meet at the bell tower east of the temple. I will take you out of the temple. Bring the red candles. You must light at least 2 at the same time. If you don't have enough red candles, you can use your own blood as a substitute. This is Fa Hua's handwriting. Ning Chushui's eyes sharpened. He took out the note they had found in the kitchen earlier that day, compared them carefully, and confirmed it. This was indeed Fa Hua's handwriting. It must be a trap. Dan Hong's eyes, bloodshot for a long time, had not faded. In fact, they had grown darker. The Crimson Door warned us very clearly, do not leave the room at night. Those ghosts must be trying to lure us out. Everyone, do not be fooled. As he spoke, he reached out to snatch the paper from Ning Shui's hand. Give me that paper now. I'll throw it away. Everyone seemed to be standing at a crossroads of life and death. Trust what was written on the paper, or continue staying in the room, trying to survive the night. The choice tonight could very well decide whether they lived or died. Give it to me now. Dan Hong's eyes were bloodshot, the whites completely covered in red veins, growling at Ning Shui. His reaction was extreme, but Ning Shui was no child. He wouldn't lose his composure over the other's harsh words. Even though Dan Hong was no longer rational, he wasn't entirely wrong. The Crimson Door had clearly warned them not to go out at night. Based on past experience, the Crimson Door's warnings often contained deadly rules. Once activated, unless under special circumstances, survival depends solely on the ghost artifact. Dan Hong lunged toward Ning Shui, reaching for the paper, but how could he possibly overpower her? His wrist was seized in a vice-like grip, the sharp pain jolting his brain into a sliver of clarity. Dan Hong felt the immense force around his wrist, his face twisting in terror. Though Ning Shui was no larger than him, her strength was extraordinary. It hurts so much. Let go of me. Ning Shui released him, casting a cold glance his way. I despise it when people snatch things from my hands. Don't let it happen again. Dan Hong gritted his teeth, clutching his wrist. A vivid bruise had already formed. I just don't want to see you all walking to your deaths. The Crimson Door's warnings are never to be broken, or the consequences will be dire. Ning Shui shot back. Which door is this for you? Dan Hong, the fourth door. Ning Shui nodded. All right, then let me tell you this. Whether it's the warnings on the Crimson Door or the rule about not leaving at night, none of it is absolute. A seasoned player who's crossed many doors once told me that special circumstances exist within certain doors. Hearing this, Dan Hong seemed to sense Ning Shui's intent to leave the room, and he shouted in protest, "But those are just rare cases, aren't they? Besides, none of you can be sure this paper is real. Going out now, isn't that just gambling? If we have to gamble, why not choose a situation with better odds?" Ning Shui studied Dan Hong, then suddenly smiled. "You're terrified that we'll leave this room, aren't you?" Dan Hong clenched his teeth. "Isn't it obvious? If you believe what's on that paper, you'll definitely leave, and you'll take all the candles with you." "I don't want to die alongside you." Ning Shui pulled 2 candles from her pocket and tossed them to Dan Hong. "Not too many, not too few, enough to last you a few hours. The 3 of us will use 3 candles. You'll have 2 all to yourself. Any problem with that?" Dan Hong stared at the 2 candles in his hands. Both had already burned down a bit. Even if he rationed them, they wouldn't last the night. "I want that one." He pointed at the candle in Ning Shui's hand. Lu Renfeng couldn't hold back anymore. He rolled up his sleeves, glaring as he cursed. "You little brat, do you have any sense of decency? We've already given you candles, and you're still asking for more? You're nothing but trouble. You're nowhere to be seen when there's work to be done, but when it's time to divvy up, you're full of demands." Dan Hong refused to back down, his voice icy. "Didn't you take these candles from other rooms? Do they have your names written on them?" Smack! Lu Renfeng landed a punch right on his eye. "Did you write it or not?" Dan Hong was beaten dizzy and staggering. Seeing Lu Renfeng raise his fist again, Dan Hong was afraid that Lu Renfeng would hit too hard and actually kill him, so he hurriedly said, "Yes! Yes, I wrote it, big brother. I wrote it. The names on it are indeed yours. I only need these 2 candles." Hearing this, Lu Renfeng snorted coldly, covering his face, still as dark as Lord Bao. Ning Shui glanced at Dan Hong and shook his head. "Then let's go." Dan Hong turned his face away, one hand covering his face, his eyes full of resentment. "Go ahead. Just go ahead. Go and die," he muttered, then suddenly let out a sinister laugh, his voice strange. "That's right. Why should I stop you? If you all die, won't I be the one to survive? Kindness is repaid with enmity. You ungrateful bastards, go die quickly." Earlier, his mind had been clouded by fear, only worried that his teammates would abandon him and take the candles away. But after what just happened, he suddenly realized that if everyone else died, his situation would become much safer. If so, he might as well let them go. Dan Hong didn't believe that the three of them could survive even an hour in the mist-filled temple courtyard. Meanwhile, the candles in his hand were enough to last him at least 3 hours or more. Thinking of this, he became much calmer. In the room, Ning Chushui held that piece of paper, silently waiting for dawn to arrive. In theory, after tonight's early morning, they would survive until the 5th day and could leave the temple. However, tonight was also the most dangerous time. Ning Chushui was very confident that the paper in his hand was real, but he couldn't be completely sure that going out tonight to find the little monk was the path to survival, and if they guessed wrong, tonight would be extremely dangerous. "Xiaoge, are you worried?" Liu Renfeng suddenly asked. The last time he asked this question was when they passed through the first door. Ning Chushui smiled, not hiding it. "A little. You're not sure this is the path to survival either? Human feelings can be wrong, but sometimes intuition is such a wonderful thing, isn't it? You're a fortune teller. In your terms, what is intuition?" Liu Renfeng said honestly, "Divination." Ning Chushui smiled and shook his head. Liu Renfeng could tell fortunes, but he couldn't casually reveal the results to outsiders. Moreover, he had told Ning Chushui that even the best fortune tellers couldn't guarantee 100% accuracy. "Are you two companions?" At this moment, Shen Weiwei wanted to join their conversation. "Yeah. Do you often pass through doors together?" "Not really. Xiaoge often wanders in the Crimson Door, but I rarely enter doors." Shen Weiwei looked at Ning Chushui with slight surprise, thinking to herself, no wonder this guy looked so calm. Turns out he often wandered in the Crimson Door. This further solidified her determination to follow Ning Chushui out tonight. Shen Weiwei's thoughts were quite simple. After enduring the eerie and maddening atmosphere within the temple, she would rather fall while searching for an escape than do nothing at all, just watching herself slowly sink into the abyss. The sound of a bell rang out from the eastern side of the temple. Its rhythm was identical to when the little monk had struck it earlier, as if it were a guide, a beckoning call. "It's time. We have to go." Ning Chushui picked up the red candles, letting Liu Renfeng light 3 of them, then handed one already lit to Dan Hong. To be honest, he didn't want to leave even a single candle for this man. Dan Hong looked at them as if they were ungrateful wretches. These red candles were all collected by their group, some of which Ning Chushui had risked his life to retrieve from other rooms at night. Inside the Crimson Door, they had no obligation to leave Dan Hong any candles at all. Carrying 2 extra on themselves just in case of an emergency was far better than having nothing. Leaving 2 candles for him was already a sacrifice of their own resources. But Dan Hong wasn't just dissatisfied, he even resented them because the candles left for him were rather short. If it were him, Dan Hong wouldn't get a single candle. After opening the door, the mist had already engulfed the entire temple, cold and thick, merging with the deep darkness of the night. Within the fog, faint sighs drifted through the air, making one's skin crawl. Once outside, the 3 held their candles close, staying tight together. "Don't separate," Ning Chushui said, leading them eastward. Liu Renfeng turned his head to look back at the room, now nearly swallowed by the mist, and sighed. "Xiaoge, you're still too kind. If it were me, I wouldn't leave him a single candle." Ning Chushui stared ahead. "Don't praise me. I don't deserve the word kind. The reason I left him candles is only because I hope he doesn't die too quickly." The other 2 were startled by this. At night in this temple, who knows how many ghosts are lurking to harm people? Right now, we know of at least 2, the abbot and the monk who vanished on the 2nd day. If he dies too fast, those ghosts will come for us instead, and that would be troublesome. On the other hand, if he's still alive and alone, then the chances of the ghosts focusing on him aren't much smaller than on us. Ning Shui spoke calmly, sending a chill down the spines of Liu Renfeng and Shen Weiwei. Liu Renfeng recalled how he had just praised Ning Chushui for being kind, and now felt a strange twist in his gut. He didn't know if Ning Chushui was kind or not, but he was definitely ruthless. Shen Weiwei, on the other hand, felt that this man was far too deep. When he plotted against others, he made them completely unaware. If he wanted someone dead, that person would likely die without knowing why, or even that they had died at all. She began to feel fortunate that she hadn't offended him. Otherwise, she didn't know how she would die. As they ventured deeper into the mist, everything around them began to blur. The thick fog obscured their vision, and the deeper they went, the denser it became. "Shuige, can you get a fix on our direction?" Shen Wei's voice carried a hint of hesitation as she glanced around warily. "I heard there's a very interesting experiment overseas, where people are." Before she could finish her sentence, Ning Chu Shui cut her off. "There's no need to worry. The fog is thick, but it's not without reference points. It's not that easy to get lost." He paused. "Besides, we have someone in our group with an exceptionally good sense of direction." Shen Wei froze at this. "An exceptionally good sense of direction? You mean this big guy here?" Liu Renfeng spoke up. "My name is Liu Renfeng. You can call me by my name." Shen Wei offered an awkward apology. "Sorry, I meant no harm." The three of them pressed forward, but they hadn't gone far when a voice suddenly called out from behind. Wei. Shen Wei's heart seized, her pulse began to race. Because that voice was the voice of her deceased boyfriend, Duan Zhengtian. Wei. The voice came again, this time much clearer than before. Shen Wei instinctively wanted to turn around, but the red candle in her hand flickered violently. That flicker snapped her back to her senses. "Hey, you two, did you hear something behind us?" For safety's sake, Shen Wei suddenly asked the two people walking ahead, but they didn't answer her. A chill ran down her spine. Something was wrong. She stared hard at the two figures in front of her, her gaze slowly drifting downward, until it stopped at their feet. What she saw made cold sweat break out on her back. She realized the two people walking in front of her were walking on their tiptoes, and they were raised high. At a glance, it looked as if the toes of Ningqiu Shui and Liu Renfeng were completely vertical, supporting their entire bodies on just the tips of their shoes. Their walking posture was grotesque. They moved without bending their knees at all. Seeing this, Shen Wei finally understood. The two people in front of her were not Ningqiu Shui and Liu Renfeng. She swallowed hard and stopped walking. But the moment she stopped, the two people ahead stopped too. "What's wrong?" Ningqiu Shui's voice drifted back from the front. It carried a faint, indescribable eeriness. "The bell tower is right ahead. Why aren't you coming?" Shen Wei stared at their backs, her fear mounting. The two figures stood perfectly still, balanced on their tiptoes, like puppets dangling from invisible strings. She took a step back, then another. "No, the bell tower isn't ahead." Shen Wei gritted her teeth, speaking as if to answer them, and as if to convince herself. Then she turned and fled into the depths of the fog. The moment she vanished into the mist, Ningqiu Shui and Liu Renfeng suddenly twisted their heads 180 degrees, staring directly at the direction she had run. If Shen Wei were still there, she would have seen that those two were not Liu Renfeng and Ningqiu Shui, but the dead Lu Nanshang and Chai Shan. A moment later, a pale white hand suddenly shot out from the mist, grabbing the two of them. Then, with a gentle pull, the skin on their bodies peeled away, leaving behind two bloody, mangled corpses. Shen Wei didn't know when she had lost sight of the two of them. Clearly, from start to finish, their figures had always been within her line of sight. But then, just like that, she suddenly lost them. Shen Wei couldn't understand what was happening. This absurd feeling brought her immense fear, and she once again deeply realized the terrifying methods of the ghosts within the Crimson Door. Despite her fear, she didn't dare to stop. Shen Wei was terrified that if she paused even for a moment, the two ghosts from before would catch up. But she also didn't dare to run too fast, afraid the flame on the red candle in her hand would be blown out by the wind. She had no matches on her. Once the flame went out, it would basically mean death. And so, she ran frantically through the mist. She ran and ran and ran, until she heard Duan Zhengtian's voice again in her ear. "Over here!" Shen Wei looked fearfully toward the direction of the sound. She intended to turn and flee, but then she recalled what had just happened, and she suddenly felt that Duan Zhengtian had never meant to harm her. The words Liu Renfeng had said to her earlier suddenly echoed in her ears. If Duan Zhengtian had wanted to harm her, she would have died on the very first night. Thinking this, Shen Weiwei no longer cared about anything else. She ran straight toward the direction of the voice. We've been separated. At this moment, Ning Shui was also fleeing through the mist. He was in the lead, so he shouldn't have noticed the problem so quickly. But he often faced the boundary between life and death, so his sense of hearing was very sharp. There were things the eye couldn't see, but the ear could hear. The footsteps behind him went from heavy to light, then suddenly disappeared, replaced by a sound like a dragonfly skimming the water. The transition was so abrupt that Ning Shui immediately realized what had happened. So he ran very fast. Even before the two ghosts behind him could react, he had already dashed into the mist. Run southeast first, leave the ghost behind, then turn northeast. That was Ning Shui's plan. But he quickly realized that the temple in the mist had undergone strange changes. Their sense of direction was gradually becoming chaotic. Moreover, eerie footsteps kept emerging from deep within the mist. The flame on the candle in Ning Shui's hand flickered incessantly, as if it were about to go out at any moment. It hurt so much. It hurt so much. It was you who had my skin peeled off. Give me back my skin. Chaishan's voice echoed everywhere in the mist, constantly grating on Ning Shui's nerves. In the hazy mist ahead, Ning Shui saw a bloody corpse staring straight at him. It was Chaishan. Without a moment's hesitation, he turned and fled. But he hadn't run far before Ning Shui saw more corpses, one by one, all standing within the mist, staring at him with greedy eyes, as if they wanted to devour him alive. You cannot escape. Come, join us. Though they did not move, they pressed in on Ning Shui relentlessly, their strange moans and temptations growing clearer and clearer. Ning Shui gripped his flickering flame tightly. It seemed affected by them, as if it could go out at any moment. Soon, he was completely surrounded by countless corpses. Seeing no path of escape, and the candle in his hand nearly burned out, Ning Shui bit down hard on his tongue. The taste of blood flooded his mouth. Then, he spat the blood onto the candle. The flame on the red candle immediately steadied, its light flaring outward. The surrounding corpses, touched by this light, let out unwilling cries, then slowly retreated into the depths of the mist. At the same time, the sound of a temple bell rang out again. The echoing bell made the candlelight much more stable. Without hesitation, Ning Shui ran straight toward the source of the bell. Don't run, don't run. The venomous, mad voice of Chaishan sounded from behind. You got me skinned alive. Now, give it back to me. Ning Shui shouted as he ran. Who skinned you? Chaishan let out a twisted laugh. You want to know who it is? Follow me. I'll show you. Ning Shui laughed. No thanks. I want to go home. You go play by yourself. Hearing this, Chaishan, who had been clinging to him like a monkey putting on a show, suddenly flew into a rage. You deserve to die! I died here! None of you will escape! Seeing the pursuer enraged, Ning Shui smirked to himself. One man, one ghost. They raced through the mist. Gradually, Ning Shui spotted a red candle floating in the air up ahead. Its faint light could illuminate a great distance. Seeing that candle, Ning Shui knew. He just had to follow it. He sped up. By now, Ning Shui had no strength left to worry about Liu Renfeng or Shen Weiwei. That was the Crimson Door. Whenever a player thought they had the power to overcome it, it would use reality to deliver a crushing blow. In the face of ghosts, no matter how many ghost artifacts a human possessed, they could not resist them. One small mistake could cost a life. Chaishan chased from behind. When he saw the candle in the sky, he let out a miserable scream. He was unwilling. The maddening cry was so vivid that Ning Shui could almost picture the furious expression on the corpse's face. But no matter how angry he was clearly blocked by that candle. Ning Shui could feel it. Under the candlelight, the footsteps behind him began to slow, falling further and further behind. He kept running and finally saw the silhouette of the bell tower ahead. Xiaoge, hurry! Liu Renfeng's voice rang out from the bell tower. Ning Shui looked up and saw that this man had arrived before him. Not bad, Big Beard. You've got some skills. As expected of a fortune teller, truly extraordinary, Ning Shui said with a smile. He walked toward the stairs beneath the bell tower, about to ascend when he heard a woman's shout from behind. Wait for me. The two turned to look, their eyes widening in surprise. The woman was none other than Shen Weiwei. Neither Ning Qishui nor Liu Renfeng had expected her to still be alive. Shen Weiwei looked utterly disheveled, her lips pale, one hand drenched in blood. On her neck, there was even a bruise in the shape of a hand, blue and red, showing just how dangerous her situation had been. She quickly ran into the bell tower, turning her head to look back. The thick fog completely obscured her vision.
Tiange! Tiange!
Shen Weiwei shouted into the mist, but no one answered. Shen Weiwei's shout made the other two instantly understand why she had managed to survive this far. How sentimental, Liu Renfeng said with a strange expression, though his tone held no mockery. On the contrary, he deeply admired people like that. Let's go. Head upstairs. Ning Qishui led the two up the bell tower. The little monk, Fa Hua, had been waiting there for a long time, but his condition now was bizarre. Fa Hua had no body, only a complete human skin remained, standing silently on the ground. In his eye sockets, there were no eyes, only two flickering flames. Faced with such a terrifying sight, none of the three felt fear, because they knew Fa Hua would not harm them. Little monk, how did you become like this? Fa Hua smiled faintly, pressing his palms together. This humble monk has found a way to leave the temple. Ning Qishui's eyes flickered. What way? Fa Hua said, the temple was sealed by Master Hui Pu. His power is beyond imagination, like a mouth clamped tightly shut over its teeth. And this humble monk is merely one tooth within it, powerless to push open the temple gate and deliver you benefactors from this place. So, I returned to my quarters and searched through the belongings my master left behind. Suddenly, an idea struck me. At this point, the little monk deliberately paused. He looked at Ning Qishui with a faint smile. Benefactor Ning is so clever. Can you guess what it is? Ning Qishui thought for a moment, then said, the little master's method is to become a rotten tooth. Hearing this, the smile on Fa Hua's face froze for a moment. Seeing this, Ning Qishui chuckled. It seems I guessed correctly. Fa Hua sighed. If the visitors to this temple in years past had been as sharp as Benefactor Ning, perhaps they would not have met their end here. Ning Qishui shook his head, rattling the candle in his hand. Against absolute power, clever tricks are useless. The fact that we survived is thanks to the little master. But there is something I don't understand. Why did the little master want to save us? Fa Hua stood atop the bell tower, gazing toward the main hall. The Dharma Master is about to awaken. There is little time left. If Benefactor Ning wishes to know the answer, this humble monk will give you one. The reason I wanted to save you all is because if I hadn't cooked that meat porridge, you would never have encountered this trouble. I felt guilty for betraying my master's teachings from years past, and guilty toward my own heart. With this obsession in my mind, I took a gamble, only to fulfill a wish deep within me. At the mention of the meat porridge, the faces of the three all twisted with a strange expression. So, little Shifu went to great lengths to turn himself into a decaying tooth, just so Dharma Master Hui Pu would personally pull you out. Isn't that right? Fa Hua nodded. This was the only way. Liu Renfeng and Shen Weiwei beside him listened with blank, bewildered faces. They understood every word individually, but strung together it made no sense. Wait, what decaying tooth? What are you two talking about? Liu Renfeng scratched his head, mumbling in confusion. Ning Qishui explained. The little monk wanted to attain Buddhahood through a different path, to stand as an equal to Dharma Master Hui Pu. That way, Hui Pu, fearing the rise of a rival, would take the initiative to expel the little monk from the temple. Huh? Liu Renfeng still looked lost. Ning Qishui continued. Do you still remember the standard process of attaining Buddhahood? Liu Renfeng nodded. The eagle eats flesh, the offering of skin, and the act of aiding almsgiving. But the little monk didn't do any of that, did he? Ning Qishui pointed at the red candle in their hands. It doesn't have to be flesh, blood will do. The two beside him stared at the vivid red candle in their grasp and instantly understood what it was made of. These red candles were actually the blood of the little monk. We survived because of the little monk's blood. Little Shifu's actions are no different from cutting flesh to feed the eagle. After that, the little monk peeled his own skin, intending to turn it into a kasaya. This could also satisfy the second condition. But from this point on, little Shifu's actions had already deviated from the temple's formula for attaining Buddhahood. This act can be understood as a challenge to authority. Shen Weiwei asked, "And the final condition?" "The little monk didn't prepare any offerings, did he?" Little monk Fa Hua pressed his palms together before his chest, slowly bowing his head. "The flesh and blood of this humble monk is the offering. But they will not accept this offering, because once they do, this humble monk will become a Buddha." The rules of becoming a Buddha were passed down by Dharma Master Hui Pu, so anyone who becomes a Buddha in this way will be under his absolute control. But this humble monk has made a few small changes to the process, so I will not be controlled like that. Once this humble monk becomes a Buddha, the other senior brothers in the temple will follow suit. By then, Deng Ying Temple will have a power that Dharma Master Hui Pu cannot control, and that is something he absolutely does not want to see. Therefore, they will not accept this humble monk's offering and will expel me from Deng Ying Temple. At that time, this humble monk can lead the benefactors out of here together. The young monk's explanation made the two beside him understand. Ningqiu Shui asked, "After leaving the temple, where will the young master go?" The little monk Fa Hua fell silent. He had been adopted by his master since childhood and grew up in the temple. Leaving the temple, he would have nowhere to go. "Fa Hua, do you know your crime?" Suddenly a voice descended from the heavens, ringing in everyone's ears. Fa Hua, lost in thought, was immediately pulled back to reality. The young master looked toward the main hall of Deng Ying Temple, his eyes no longer holding the reverence they once did. Only calmness and disappointment remained. "This humble monk does not know," the young master replied. The moment he finished speaking, a thunderclap roared from the direction of the main hall. "The path of Buddhism is the true way. You cheated to become a Buddha, left behind defilement, and corrupted our orthodoxy. Your crime deserves death. But I am a merciful Buddha. Hui Pu, the Buddha ancestor, is willing to give you one chance. If you turn back and follow the true path to Buddhahood, we will let bygones be bygones." The speaker was not Dharma Master Hui Pu, but another who had already become a Buddha. The little monk Fa Hua seemed to face him from afar, his gaze calm and devoid of emotion. He slowly opened his mouth and uttered words that made the air tense. "I want to become the Buddha ancestor." The young master said, "I will forge my own path, establish an altar, and worship the Buddha, just as Dharma Master Hui Pu did. By then, let the senior brothers in the temple choose for themselves which path is the true one." As soon as the words fell, Ning Chu Shui could feel the murderous intent flooding the air of the temple. "You brat, how dare you!" Hui Pu, the Buddha ancestor, spent his entire life studying the Dharma, pouring all his heart and soul into creating the supreme method of becoming a Buddha, bringing endless benefits to future generations. It is often said that when you drink water, you remember its source. You rely on the Buddha ancestor's lineage, yet not only are you ungrateful, but you also seek to cheat and steal the fruit of Buddhahood, utterly shameless and unforgivable. That's right, deserving of death. Inside the main hall, Hui Pu had not yet spoken, but the other Buddhas were already furious, taking turns denouncing Fa Hua. Facing the condemnation of the Buddhas, Fa Hua remained unflinching. He knew that at this point, it was very difficult for them to kill him, or rather, from the moment he peeled off his own skin, he was already dead. A ghost is nearly impossible to kill. At the very least, the Buddhas in this temple could not kill him. The curses of the Buddhas rang out incessantly. Among them, one voice was particularly stifling and severe. "You are as foolish as your master. Back then, I should not have been merciful and taken you into the temple." This voice came from Abbot Hui Pu. He sat high in the presiding seat of the main hall, golden light shimmering, his Buddha eyes piercing through the misty fog, staring intently at Fa Hua. Fa Hua's body trembled. "Abbot, let me take them away, or else let me become a Buddha." The young monk's voice was calm, but it carried an undisguised threat. The corpse had already been brought to the room by Ning Chu Shui and the others, and now it stood before the door of the main hall. It was the body of the little monk, Fa Hua. The Buddhas blocked the main hall's door, refusing to let this corpse enter. Once the young monk's corpse stepped into the hall, it would mean the Buddhas had accepted his incense offering. he would become a Buddha. Moreover, he would be a Buddha different from them, one not controlled by Abbot Huipu. You wish to leave the temple, I will not stop you, but they cannot. Huipu's voice carried an anger and authority that could not be challenged. The young monk said, Abbot, I'm afraid you have no choice. Your time is running out. If you do not make a choice, I will have to become a Buddha. The corpse at the door was slowly stepping closer, entering the hall. The Buddha statues in the temple, though appearing fierce and powerful, could not stop the young monk's corpse when faced with it. At this moment, it was not yet time for the Buddhas to fully recover their strength. They could not stop Fa Hua. They could only watch helplessly as Fa Hua's corpse advanced toward the main hall. Inside the hall, the Buddhas roared in fury. Fa Hua, this is no place for your insolence. You know not the height of the heavens or the depth of the earth. How dare you show off your power at Deng Ying Temple? You will regret this. Seeing that Fa Hua's corpse was about to step into the main hall, the Buddhas inside could no longer sit still. Their peaceful faces began to contort. Fresh blood flowed from their eyes. The splendid kasayas on their bodies became soaked with blood, upon which faces of struggling people flickered in and out of view. But no matter how angry they were, they could not stop Fa Hua's steps. Finally, just as the right foot of Fa Hua's corpse was about to step into the hall, Abbot Huipu spoke. Very well. You may take them away. Heaven has the virtue of loving life. Even though you have wronged me, I still hold some affection for your master. Today, I will grant you one wish to settle the grievances of the past. Upon hearing this, Liu Renfeng couldn't help himself. He spat a mouthful of saliva onto the ground. Pfft! Just a moment ago, you called the little monk's master an idiot, and now you're talking about gratitude and debts. Hypocrite. The moment he finished speaking, he immediately felt a barrage of hostile glares shooting out from within the hall. Liu Renfeng felt a chill run down his spine and promptly shut his mouth. The gate is open. You may leave. Huipu's voice was cold, carrying a hint of barely concealed reluctance. Still, in the end, he had opened the door. The human-skinned Fa Hua gestured for the three to follow him, and together they headed toward the main gate of Deng Ying Temple. Piercing through the thick fog, Ningqiu Shui could even hear the unwilling cries of Chai Shan and the others from inside. Numerous venomous gazes from deep within the mist stared fixedly at the three of them, carrying a bone-piercing chill, yet they could exert no pressure on them at all. And so, they arrived at the main gate of Deng Ying Temple. The gate, which had been tightly locked, now stood wide open. The trio of Ningqiu Shui quickly departed from this place, but just as they stepped through the gate, Fa Hua suddenly turned back, facing the hidden gazes within the main hall. Fa Hua opened his mouth. Ah, that's right, Dharma Master Huipu. Before he passed away, my master had a question he always wanted to ask you. Huipu said coldly, What question? Fa Hua said, He wanted to ask you, in the end, do you wish to become a Buddha, or do you wish to satisfy the desires within your own heart? As soon as this question was uttered, the entire Deng Ying Temple fell into a deathly silence. This statement was like a sharp blade, stabbing straight into the deepest recesses of Huipu's soul. After a moment, Huipu's voice rang out from within the main hall, laced with bewilderment and rage. Desires? Do you even know what you're saying? I am the Buddha ancestor. Seeing this, Fa Hua sighed. My master was right. You have never become a Buddha. It was all just your own obsession. Those two words, become a Buddha, have harmed everyone in Deng Ying Temple. Upon hearing this, Huipu laughed loudly, a laugh filled with an indescribable confusion and despair. Obsession? That's right. This is my obsession. I have spent my entire life, read countless Buddhist sutras, mastered the secret dharma of the Buddha from ancient times to the present, and never committed an evil deed. So why can I not become a Buddha? In what way am I unworthy of the word Buddha? He paused for a moment, then spoke angrily again. You are just as jealous as your master, that damned man. If it weren't for him saying that one phrase, there is no Buddha, back then, disturbing my Buddha mind, I would never have become this way. Besides, what monk in this world does not wish to become a Buddha? Fa Hua said, My master did not wish to become a Buddha. You think your master is very noble? No, I think my master was very clear-headed. Fa Hua showed no intention of leaving the temple. Instead, he continued his dialogue with the Buddha statue within the hall. A monk is merely a monk. He cannot become a Buddha. The Buddhas that the world speaks of were all monks themselves. The sutras say, form is emptiness. Dharma Master, you are too fixated on things that do not exist. You have strayed onto a wrong path. Upon hearing this, the golden light radiating from Dharma Master Huipu blazed brilliantly, as if he intended to use a tangible display to refute the little monk. This is losing the way. Do you see these things on me? How dare you tell me this is losing the way? How many years have you even been cultivating that you dare to lecture me? He used all his strength to emit a golden light, hoping this vast Buddha's radiance would fill every corner of the temple. But soon, those golden rays quickly dimmed, shifting to an orange hue, and finally transformed into a vicious blood red. In an instant, the entire Deng Ying temple was engulfed in a horrifying blood-red glow. The mist dissipated, and under that blood-red light, the walking corpses began to twist into grotesque, deformed monsters with terrifying shapes. At that same moment, Huipu let out a sinister laugh. Heh, Buddha, Buddha. If even I cannot become a Buddha, then clearly there truly is no Buddha in this world. It seems what you want is the heavenly Tao. If there has never been a Buddha in this world, then I will be the first. Bloodlight cascaded down from the heavens, countless vengeful spirits wailing. It was hard to imagine such a thing happening within a temple. From inside came the most miserable screams. One after another, sharp tentacles emerged from the bloodlight, piercing one blood corpse after another. A pair of enormous eyes, filled with bloodshot veins, floated directly above the Buddha hall, observing everything. Within those colossal eyes was a deep well of venom and rage. Inside the temple, whether monks, blood corpses, or the others draped in kasayas within the Buddha hall, all who saw these eyes were seized by utter terror. They fled madly, rushing toward the main gate of the temple. Outside the gate, the three could still vaguely see Dan Hong holding a candle, his face pale with fear as he ran through Deng Ying Temple. Unfortunately, he didn't get far before a tentacle pierced through him, dragging him into those enormous eyes. His eyes were filled with terror, and he didn't even have time to scream before he was gone from this world forever. Fa Hua, the man of flesh, stepped out of Deng Ying Temple step by step and closed the heavy doors behind him. Sigh. He let out a long breath. No wonder back then my master had so much to say and was unwilling to speak with the Dharma Master. He had fallen too deep. No one could save him anymore. Ning Chishui smiled coldly. He reaps what he sows. Little Shifu, where do you plan to go from here? Fa Hua shook his head, his gaze heavy. This humble monk grew up in Deng Ying Temple. Now I have no place to call home. As for the future, this humble monk does not know. It's just a pity. Deng Ying Temple has completely fallen. Huipu has fully descended into the demonic path. Who knows what calamities he will bring in the days to come. By then I fear there will be widespread suffering. Ning Chishui heard this, and a peculiar thought flashed through his mind. He said to the little monk, Little Shifu, do you want to resolve this matter completely? Fa Hua was startled at first, then nodded. Benefactor Ning, do you have a way? The thick fog had already enveloped everything around them, and the bus horn sounded right on cue. Ning Chishui said to Fa Hua, Little Shifu, ask around about an organization called the Ninth Bureau, maybe the Ninth Police Bureau or something similar. They specialize in handling these matters. They might be able to help you. Fa Hua heard this, pressed his palms together, and sincerely bowed to Ning Chishui. Thank you, Benefactor Ning, for your guidance. Ning Chishui waved his hand. If fate allows, we will meet again. Perhaps. I must go now. With that, he and Liu Renfeng stepped into the mist and boarded the bus. Through the window, they saw the terrifying giant eyes above Deng Ying Temple, and once again, their hearts were filled with awe for the world behind the crimson door. This place, it was truly too eerie. Not only did ghosts exist, but there were also countless things they simply could not comprehend. 8 people, 3 survived. That feels much better than the first door, Liu Renfeng remarked with a sigh. This door, though it seemed a bit frightening, was not as dangerous as they had imagined. The Crimson Door, in order to balance the difficulty, had even deliberately arranged some NPCs to assist them. The people inside this crimson door are absolutely nothing like NPCs. Don't you feel like they're just like us, flesh and blood people? Shen Weiwei, sitting in front, suddenly spoke up, her gaze fixed on Deng Ying temple. There was no joy in her heart at having survived. The ring on her hand was ice cold. It felt very much like the hand that had grabbed hers when she got lost in the fog. Shen Weiwei clenched the ring tightly until a sharp pain shot through her palm. Only then did she disappointedly let go. Is it possible that the so-called NPCs you mentioned are actually living people? She asked. Only behind the crimson door, the forms of existence for people are many. They could be like us, or they could be strange shapes, Ning Shui replied. Hearing his answer, Shen Weiwei fell silent. In other words, they will live forever, in this world? Ning Shui pointed at the eyes in the sky. Duanzhang Tian probably won't survive much longer. Your luck is really bad. Shen Weiwei bit her lip hard. After a long while, she suddenly let out a sigh of relief and laughed bitterly. No, my luck is very good. It's me who didn't know how to cherish it. Perhaps this is the punishment. The bus started moving, and the 3 people on board quickly fell into a deep sleep. When they returned to the ghost dwelling, it was already very late. Pushing open the door, they were surprised to find only Bai Xiao inside. You're back? Bai Xiao was sitting cross-legged on the soft sofa, giving them a gentle smile. Where's Tianxun today? I haven't seen him. At this hour, he's usually sitting right here watching TV, Liu Renfeng said casually, pouring himself a glass of Wang Laoji and gulping it down as soon as he walked through the door. That kid went with Junlu Yuan to cross a door. If nothing unexpected happens, they should be back soon. Ning Shui furrowed her brow. The 2 of them went to cross a door. Which one? Since he had entered this ghost dwelling, this was the first time he'd seen Tianxun go to cross a door. The 5th. The moment she finished speaking, Liu Renfeng's eyes widened. The 5th? If I remember correctly, this is only Junlu Yuan's 2nd door, isn't it? That kid's got some nerve, huh? Bai Xiao didn't seem too worried about the 2 of them. With Tianxun leading him, it'll be fine. At that, Ning Shui suddenly remembered something and asked, Bai Xiao, how many doors has Tianxun himself crossed? Bai Xiao raised her slender fingers, lazily counting. The 8th. Both of them were stunned. That kid Tianxun had already crossed the 8th door? This guy was quietly that strong? You 2, never underestimate him. In this ghost dwelling, aside from Liang Yan, he's the best fighter. It's just that Tianxun is too kind-hearted. He doesn't really fit the survival rules of this mist world. Liang Yan has told him countless times, but he always lets it go in one ear and out the other. Eventually, Liang Yan just stopped bothering. Just as Bai Xiao finished speaking, footsteps suddenly echoed from outside the door. 2 slightly short-statured youths pushed the door open and stepped inside. Sister Bai, you're talking behind my back again, aren't you? I heard everything, Tianxun grinned, looking completely unfazed. But behind him, Junlu Yuan's face was deathly pale, as if he had just endured something utterly terrifying. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to support me.